Okay, I want to welcome you to this session of the Transportation Leadership Launchpad. This is our second session, and we're going to be focusing on accelerating your career through the fundamentals of engineering and the PE professional engineering licensure. So, as an aspiring engineering professional, you're embarking on a journey that's both challenging and rewarding. The fundamentals of engineering, FE, and the professional engineering certifications or credentials are key milestones in your journey. These act as accelerators for your career, as opening up new opportunities, accelerating your growth. And it's absolutely something that you should consider as you are working towards your career vision. We have a really packed agenda, including some panelists with experience both in the public and private sector. These are professional engineers. And so I want to dive in and I want to make the most of our time together. Remember, your active participation really does help to enrich our discussions. And please feel free to ask questions. I'll be monitoring the chat. And just to think about questions that you may have for our panelists, queue those up. And when we get to that part of the Q&A, we'll be able to ask those questions and we will have time to have our panelists weigh in on the things that you want to hear about. So if you're joining us for the first time, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Dr. James Bryant. I am the founder and president of Engineer Your Success, LLC, where I help individuals and organizations develop strategies for success. Specifically, I help them to design and live a life where they are winning at work and at home. I have over 2 decades of experience as an engineer. I've managed multi-million-dollar highway maintenance projects for the Virginia Department of Transportation, and I also manage multi-million-dollar applied research programs for the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine in Washington, D.C. I'm a John Maxwell Leadership Certified Speaker, Trainer, and Executive Coach. I have a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from North Carolina A&T and a master's and PhD from Virginia Tech. And I'm also a registered professional engineer in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So when I think about our objectives today, first, we're going to explore why the FE and PE credential is so important to your career trajectory. Then we're going to walk through some steps that you would take to be able to obtain your PE license. So understanding this process early can help you plan effectively for your future. The next, we're going to highlight the highlight of today's session is our panel discussion. So you're going to hear firsthand experience from PEs working in both the private and public sectors, offering you a well-rounded perspective on their journey. We'll also cover some practical strategies for preparing for the exams and leveraging your certifications for career advancement. This knowledge is invaluable to help you move forward in your career. And all the while, I want you to keep in mind that this should work to support the development of your career vision. The last session, we talked about our career vision, and these things should play a role as you think about the vision that you have for your career. So let's go ahead and recap session one. We worked on the career vision workbook and some general key takeaways with setting your 3 to 5 year career goals. Those midterm objectives give you concrete work to help you guide towards your daily decisions. We talked about aligning your personal values with your professional aspirations, making sure that your career not only advances, but it also feels meaningful and fulfilling to you. If you have a great career that is not fulfilling, you are not going to be in a good situation in terms of setting yourself up for future growth. We really focused on creating your personalized career vision statement. So this statement serves as your professional North Star, guiding your decisions and your actions. If you were not in last week's session or the last session, let me know in the chat box and I'll make sure that you get the link to the career vision workbook. So if you had a chance to reflect on those elements, it's great. If you haven't, there's still time to work on that and continue to complete that. Remember, this is a living document, and it should evolve and grow as you grow, as your insights grows, as you gain new insight, as you have new goals. That is supposed to grow as well. So let's map out this journey to becoming a professional engineer. The plan typically has four major milestones. Each is crucial for your development. First, you need to earn an ABET accredited engineering degree. Most of you are already on this path or have completed this path. This really serves as the foundation for making sure that you have broad engineering knowledge that's needed for your career. The second step after your educational requirement is passing the fundamentals of engineering exam, or the FE. So this is typically taken near graduation or shortly after. It tests your knowledge of engineering fundamentals. Third, you'll need to gain practical work experience. So in most states, this means working for 4 years under the supervision of a licensed PE. So this experience is crucial. It's where you apply your knowledge and develop some professional judgment. And finally, step four is that you will take the professional engineering or the PE exam. This rigorous test evaluates your ability to practice competently in a specific engineering discipline. So passing this exam is your gateway to becoming a licensed professional engineer. Again, it's important to note while the path looks pretty straightforward, it does require careful planning and dedication. And each step will build upon the previous one. If you don't pass the FE the first time, that's okay. Keep trying. If you don't pass the PE the first time, it's okay. Keep trying. No one is going to ask you how many attempts it took you to pass. They're just going to want to know that you passed. So part of this now, when we look at this trajectory, we're just looking at career advancement in terms of where you're going to be able to go in your career. So the FE exam, often called an engineering training, and that's for good reason. You're declaring to industry, to your boss, to your organization, that you have a commitment to furthering your career, that you're interested in becoming a professional engineer. It opens up further opportunities for you. So if you're working in an organization, you have your FE, you're going to be working under a professional engineer. They're going to be looking for opportunities to give you exposure. They're going to be looking for opportunities to mentor you so that you can successfully pass. When you pass the FE, it can help accelerate your career growth. So let's talk about the money, right? So I pulled some of this from the American Society of Civil Engineers 2023 salary report. These numbers may be adjusted for location, and this is all generally speaking. According to that report, the median entry level salary for civil engineers was around $74,000. However, a PE licensed civil engineer can earn a medium salary of about 130. Now, there's a big gap between that. You have to remember, if you're entry level, you're just coming in. The PE licensed experienced engineers have been working for several years in getting their professional engineering license, but that could just shows you some of that gap. If you look at in terms of career advancement, 57% of PE licensed civil engineers hold senior management positions. Only 38% of non-PE civil engineers reach that same level. So again, if you want to increase your probability of getting one of those positions, the PE is your ticket. To look at job opportunities, 25% of engineering job postings prefer or require some type of a PE license. PE license required or preferred. And this is true both in the public and the private sector. In the same thing in terms of as you move towards leading projects, again, 68% of PE civil engineers report having more decision-making power on projects. And you want to have that decision-making power to be able to continue to scope the career that you want. Now, let's get ready to move to our panel discussion. So as we're getting that set up, I'm going to ask if anyone has any questions up until this point. So we're going to have our panelists, and I will ask you all to introduce yourself in a minute, and I'm going to adjust and stop sharing my screen, and then make sure I'm highlighting all of the panelists. Spotlight for everyone. All right, so we have our panelists. There was a question that came up. So, Francis, you had a question?
Hello. Yeah, my question was the FE exam, how early can we take it?
I know you can take it either your junior or your senior year.
Because the reason I was asking is that if it's that important, is there like a set number of years between when I have to write the FE and PE exam?
No. Mm-mm. The
So you
importance,
write the FE exam, I can write the PE exam like the next year.
it depends on, I think you have to have your FE, and then after you have your FE, you get the training or experience. Again, the FE allows you to get that designation for the engineering training. So we're going to go into the panel
Okay, thank you.
discussion first, and then we'll have, if you have some other questions, put them in the chat. All right. So we are blessed to have great panelists today that are going to talk about their experiences. And I'm going to ask you all to do a brief self introduction, and then we're going to get into some of the questions. And Erin, I'm going to start with you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Erin Donovan. I work for T3 Design Corporation. We're based in Fairfax, Virginia. I have about 24 years of experience in all in consulting engineering, roadway design, land development design, traffic engineering. Uh, had PEs in various states throughout the country. Currently, I have a PE in Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina. So I'm excited to be here today and talk to you about the FEPE process. It's something I'm very passionate about and want to help guide you on the right path and answer any questions you have.
Great.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Andre Boykin Jr. I am a bridge engineer, have a combination of experience in both private and public sector. I worked at Illinois Department of Transportation for about 8 years, and I've been in private sector the remaining 5 years of my career. I am currently a bridge engineer based out of Raleigh, North Carolina. Thank
Cool.
you.
All right. Hitisha?
Hey everyone, I am Hitisha. I also go by Tish or Tisha. I have 8 years of engineering experience, mostly with a background in electrical engineering. But in the last 8 years, I've been able to add a lot of different projects into my portfolio, ranging from working as a project engineer on Long Island Railroad and some of the transit projects like highway and roadways development, sometimes on the electrical side and sometimes on the project engineering side. I've worked on a lot of high school buildings, and recently my experience has been related to a lot of capital improvement planning for hospitals. Yeah, so now I'm taking all of that experience and starting a new job at an MEP startup. So yeah, I'm excited about that.
Thank you. Thanks, Tish. Anna?
Good morning from Anchorage, Alaska. Anna Boson. I'm the Regional Traffic Safety Engineer for the Department of Transportation for the state of Alaska. I've been working since 2002. I've had both private and public experience, and I've been with the state of Alaska for almost 16 years. I have a mechanical engineering undergraduate degree, but ended up working in civil for my entire career and loved it. I'm a registered civil engineer with the state of Alaska since 2009, I believe.
I'm glad we won you over. I'm glad. All right, so let's get started. We all want to know, can you talk about your path to getting the PE? You can talk about the experiences that you've had with the FE, and then your time getting the experience under professional engineer or any other challenges that you face. We're going to be pretty free flowing with the discussion. I am going to ask Anna to start us off with that because Anna sent me a whole bunch of notes that she says she want to make sure that she covers.
Yeah, I did send some notes to James late last night. I started my career I finished college in California And so worked for the local municipality right after college because I didn't want to leave my college town. I loved college so much. I worked there for about 4 years in California. You can sit for the PE after 2 years of experience instead of I think most states it's 4 years.
Yeah.
Getting my FE right after I graduated allowed me to then have that clock start right when I got my first job after college. I was very motivated to track all of that time for my first job and worked under a licensed engineer and made sure it was very clear that that was my trajectory. And so sat for the PE exam in California. This was back in the day before they had computer stuff. You know, you had to go to the state fairground in Sacramento and sit there. People are bringing in their pillows. Somebody wheeled in their own chair.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of an experience if you're a man going to this exam location, expect a line for the bathroom. And for women, I got to just walk right in. There was no one waiting. So I was loving that part. But anyway, I'll let some other panelists talk further.
Hitisha, what about you?
So my PE experience wasn't for me personally, I didn't have as much clarity going into the industry. In fact, this is something that Dr. James and I talked about during our podcast episode, where it took me first couple of years to even figure out whether or not I want to be in this industry. And a part of the reason was what you just mentioned in your story, the like no line for women's bathroom. For me, it was so hard to really picture myself succeeding and seeing myself in the roles which were traditionally held by very certain specific looking people. And being the only one in the room often made me feel like, since I was just getting out of school, I will use the right language. It just made me feel not cool at all. And it made me feel like I'm going into maybe an industry which no one is going to care about in the future. It was just like thinking from the perspective of someone who was just graduating. So yeah, but over the time, first couple of years, when I saw that I was, as a young engineer, I was being exposed to the clients and I was participating in some of the decisions that impacted the cities that I was living in. And I could know people like the Department of Transportation and the government bodies in our cities. That narrative helped me see the importance in it. And then as I stuck with it, I realized that I need to give this industry a fair try by going for the best qualification that there is in there before I make my own judgments about the industry, right? So that's how I ended up getting my PE to figure things out for myself.
Yeah. No, that's great. Thanks for sharing. Andre?
So my journey to licensure, I didn't know how important it was to be licensed in college. Went to Tennessee State University, got my undergraduate in civil engineering, got a degree in architectural engineering. Then I went to grad school and got my master's in structural engineering. But I started working for Illinois DOT in November of 2011. And one of my mentors, he's one of my first supervisors, Rich Dotson, he was telling me, hey, Andre, if you really want to advance, you got to get licensure. You can't have any vertical movement without it. You really have a low ceiling if you don't get your credentials, particularly if you're in civil engineering, transportation space. There's no way you can ascend without those credentials. And so after hearing that, it's like, wow, well, I don't want to be stagnant. I want to continue to grow and try to get promoted and things of the sort. So I hunkered down and start going after trying to get my credentials. And it's a grind. You know, you've got to dedicate yourself to studying and really kind of shutting out the outside world for a few months, actually, because you've got to really be committed to passing the exam. And really, it's a test of dedication, determination, and resiliency because you're talking to someone who was a repeat test taker for both the FE and the PE. But when you look me up, you're going to see that license behind my name.
Yep.
So that's all that matters. You dig deep and you find out a lot about yourself, like how badly do you want this, because there has to be a level of comfort for, NCES to pass you. And you don't want, if you're going to be engaging with the client, like, you want to have your core competencies and have at least a technical acumen to be able to talk to the client and to be able to do good work. So it's just so important. I got a lot of civil engineering mentees, and I tell them, after I ask them how they're doing, that's the next thing that comes out of my mouth. Like, when are we studying for the FE? And like, to date, I think I've got about 8 mentees that I've helped pass that exam, and it just really just brightens my day. Because it's just so important. Like, if you're an engineer, and I liken it to, and I'll close with this because I want to give the other panelists more chances to talk. I liken it to finishing a race. Like, if you went to school and you got your engineering degree, can you really say you're an engineer? You got a degree, but in the state of North Carolina, I can't say I'm an engineer without a PE license. Like, NC Bells is going to call you a designer. Like, you cannot. The name engineer, it comes with a lot of, there's a lot of power behind that title, engineer. And you just want to finish the race. I wanted to go through all the steps so that I can really say that I'm a fully competent engineer.
Thank you, Andre. I appreciate that. Again, I was several time a test taker as well, and it's okay. Like, that is okay. Erin?
What great stories from everyone else. Mine's very similar, but a little bit different. I'll add a few things that I don't know that have been said so far. I'll say that because I think we're speaking to some folks that are still in college, that I was fortunate enough in my college undergraduate experience to have mentors and guides that pushed me to get that EIT taken care of. That's a hard test, and that test does not get any easier with time. You have to draw back to freshman year in college. So the longer you wait to take that test, the harder it's going to get. I actually took it as a senior. I think Anna might have said you can take it senior year. I mean, I took it April of my senior year, got it done, and then didn't have to think about it, and then was on that path towards the PE. So I would highly recommend consider doing that, or taking it as soon as possible after you graduate, just because it's. And then my process from there, I guess I always kind of knew I was on that PE process. Maybe I saw others ahead of me in their career and I saw they had a PE, and that was just, I knew I was going to proceed in that direction. I wanted to be, like Andre said, I wanted that vertical mobility, and I knew that I had to have that PE to get that, to be able to be a manager, to be able to continue to progress in my career. So for me, that was very important. But just having that PE, just having engineer behind your name, it lends a certain credibility to you when you reach out to clients or peers, colleagues about projects. Just saying I'm a PE, that means that you've taken this, you have finished the race, as Andre said. I like that. I'm a runner, so I like that comparison. So having that is really important behind your name, whether you're signing and sealing plans or whether you're, whatever you're doing in the industry, it just lends you that credibility. I guess I kind of accelerated that process as much as I could. I used my master's degree as a year of experience. I used a couple of internships, and I took that PE test as soon as I could. And I think somebody said locking themselves in a room and studying. I think it's really important to try and carve out time specifically for studying for the PE. Although I was with Anna, I was carrying in a rolling suitcase of books. And that was the old days when you went to a testing center and you had it with everybody and you can only take it twice a year. So things have changed slightly. Anyway, I think studying with others is really helpful, especially for the PE, because you can bounce ideas off of each other and just carve out that time. It's hard. I know life is busy. There's a lot of things competing for our attention, and you have a full-time job, most likely. So you're trying to fit that in. But it's important. And so carving out time is important. And if you can have a study group, I had 2 study buddies, and we are still in touch to this day and still talk about how we helped each other pass that PE. So if you can do that, I would highly recommend it. So I think that's it, James. I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah. And for me, very similar. So I knew I wanted to go to grad school and get my PhD, right? So I went to North Carolina A&T. We talked about taking the FE. We even had a class for the EIT. I was not in, I think I was having senioritis around that time. So I wasn't really focused in on that. And so I didn't pass it at that time. Kind of beat myself up a little bit. and then kept saying, I'm going to take it again, I'm going to take it again. And you keep delaying and you keep delaying. Then I made the excuse, well, I'm going to have my PhD and maybe I'll go teach at a university. Maybe I don't need it. And then the further I got along, even in doing research and in grad school, I knew that I wanted to do something that was going to be more practical. And since I was going to be doing things more practical, I was going to be touching the lives of people and dealing with people where the PE actually meant something. And so then it became a little bit more serious for me. And I eventually passed the EIT, and then I started working and getting the experience that I needed to be able to take the PE. And the first time I took the PE was the day before I got married. So needless to say, I didn't do as well that time as I did the next time that I took it. But again, nobody's counting how many times that you take it. Okay, Anna, and this question I think is a good one for you and Andre to talk about, and that's the difference between the public and private sector. Because you're in the public sector now, Anna. Andre, you've been in the public sector and are now in the private sector. Let's have a bit of a discussion about that. And any of the other panelists, if there's a point that you want to weigh in on, just raise your hand and I'll make sure that we add you in. Go ahead, Anna.
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, I started with the city municipality for my first part of my career for 4 years. Sat for the exam in California, did not pass on the first time or the second time. Finally passed it on the third time. But after I passed it on the third time, I then moved to Alaska. And so they have their own process, and I needed a few more years of time, responsible charge time, and just standard professional time. And so I actually was working for a private company at the time in a small community, and I won't say the community, but I was working there, and there was a professional engineer in that community. And the agreement was he knew I wanted to get my PE in Alaska. I had already passed the exam and was just waiting for the time needed to be on the record for the licensure to basically transfer the test scores for acceptance in Alaska. And he agreed to it verbally and through the company. And then when the time came for him to sign off on that time, he presented me with a non-competition agreement that he expected me to sign and say that I would not actually work as an engineer for 5 years after getting my PE in Alaska. I was completely blindsided by it, and so was the rest of the professionals at the company. I declined signing that and then left that community and started working for Alaska. I bring all of that drama to share with you that there is competition in the private industry, and there's so much behind getting that PE that there is some people who might feel threatened by that, especially if you're working in a small area or a very niche market and you're getting that experience. It was a disappointing thing because then I had to basically work that much longer to delay my transfer in order to get the PE. I work for the state of Alaska, and I've been with the state for almost 16 years since that point. They were very supportive. Many people in the agency. It's a very engineer heavy industry and heavy in the government part aspect of it. It's a requirement for moving up in the department. Senior leadership, they all have their PEs. It's very much part of the culture. And I would say it's the thing that offers you the opportunity to be a decision maker. Because when you are not a PE here, you are essentially working under the decision makers. So it is limiting, like James and others have mentioned earlier, for government, I believe. So I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, Anna. Andre?
And so, yes, can you hear me, James? Great. So starting off in public sector, I loved my time at Illinois DOT. I got a chance to really learn from a lot of people and, mentors I still talk to this day. But if I would kind of comparing the two, when I transitioned to private sector, I had to learn a lot more at a faster rate, because the difference between one of the things with private sector, everything is based on bottom line and your utilization. And for our students in the audience, utilization is what you can charge to billable projects. You want to be as billable as much as possible, so you're not charging overhead or admin time when you do your time card entries. Because consultants, like you're in the private sector, we are giving our expertise to the client and they're paying for that expertise. And so the budget of a project, you're trying to keep the budget healthy by any means necessary. You're trying to make sure that we nail that scope of services. Basically, students, the scope of services is when you put together a project, like what are the said tasks that you would have to do from conceptual design to final construction documents. Like, what's the design process look like? That would be your scope. And so, like, when I became a consultant, it's like, man, I had to kind of really put in extra hours to get up to speed, because they're expecting you to kind of hit the ground running. Like, if you're entry level, there'll be a series of training. You may have someone you work up under, but yeah, for the most part, you kind of got to hit the ground running. And so becoming a consultant just really forced me to grow quicker and really tested how hungry I was to kind of go out and get information. I was spending a lot of late hours just trying to get up to speed, reading different policies, codes, and standards, just trying to make sure that I'm putting my best foot forward professionally. Consultants, like, because everything is based on what the company is generating, income, like when work slows down, there may be layoffs. Now, public sector, there's a little more job security. And so you kind of got to weigh the pros and cons. But I enjoy my time in public sector, but I've been private now for 5 years, and it forced me mentally to be sharper as an engineer, which, that helped me in the long run.
No, I think that's great. Hitisha, is there anything you wanted to add?
In terms of
General the conversation.
Yeah, in terms of public versus private, I think my personal experience has been, of course, public sector. In even in the jobs that I've applied for or the projects that my resume has been sent out for, it's been always mandatory for the engineers, even if they are helping engineers, like junior engineers, to at least have taken PE exam or have the PE license. But for a lot of private sector jobs, there were a lot more opportunities. But again, they don't let you really get to the point where you're making decisions for any of your projects unless you have a PE.
Erin, is there anything you'd like to add?
As a consultant who does work for DOTs, basically, like our clients are Virginia DOT, Maryland State Highway Association, and others, we're often asked by our clients to provide staff to help them, and they have to have certain credentials. So having more PEs as a private company helps us with our credentials, helps us show that we have a commitment to engineering, and that it kind of raises our level of professionalism. It's why we encourage, even if they're not going to be signing and sealing plans, it's important that they get that PE and show that commitment to the engineering profession. That helps us. I've never been in the public sector except for doing some staff augmentation. It does help us with our proposals and, when we develop scopes of work, like Andre was talking about, when we show the people that will be working on our contracts and tasks, it helps us. I don't think it really matters if you're in public or private. I think it's still kind of, especially in civil engineering, I think it's still something that helps you, helps the company or the agency you're working for, and is kind of mutually beneficial either way.
Oh, go ahead, Andre.
So there's an analogy that I got from one of my mentors, James Bell. He's a PE as well. He worked with me at Illinois Department of Transportation. He put an analogy to me that I use constantly. So when I didn't have my license, it was like I'm trying to get in my favorite restaurant, but I won't be seated. That's how I felt, because you're in the presence of engineers with licenses. You don't have one. And so I kind of felt like, I'm not even on the same level with them. So I'm in my favorite restaurant. I ain't even got seated yet. When I get the FE, I'm seated and they feeding me salad and bread. I'm not really eating the full meal yet because I don't have the PE. When you get the PE, now you get the full menu and you're eating, lobster, shrimp, whatever you want to eat. So it helps tremendously. So, just get it done and you don't have to think about it.
I think that's great. And so when I started working and was getting my experience for the PE was in the private sector. When I actually finally passed the PE exam, it was when I was in the public sector. And it did open up opportunities for promotions and other things for me. In fact, when I passed the PE, it opened up the opportunity for me to transition from managing research projects to then becoming the person in charge of all of the statewide maintenance contracts in Virginia. So we've talked about, the journey, the importance of having the P and the FE. What I would like to know is, do you guys have any tips or tricks or tools or suggestions that you would have for the participants as they prepare specifically for the FE? And we can talk about the PE because some of the tips or tricks may be the same. But can we get into that a little bit? And I'm going to start with Hitisha. We'll start with you.
Sure. So for FE, well, I took my FE and PE on the same year. So I was one of those people who marathoned the entire year. It took me 12 months to do both. It was one hell of a year. So for FE, I would definitely suggest that the closer you are to your graduation date, the better it is for you to take your FE because a lot of the fundamentals are clear to you. And when I took it, I was, I think, 4 years out of school. Not four, actually, 6 years out of school. Sorry, I just took it 2 years ago. 6 years out of school. So I could still see that a lot of the fundamentals and just the ability to sit for long hours to study some of the things like calculus and things that you cannot relate to in your career anymore, it just gets very cumbersome. And not the test being lengthy and difficult is one aspect. The other aspect is you not being able to see the application of those concepts in your job anymore, which kind of creates a lot of friction. It prevents you from being excited about the subject, about taking the exam altogether. That's why I would say FE should be get done with as soon as possible, because when you get to the PE, at least you can inspire yourself by seeing the exact direct application of even your work and the concepts and whatnot in your day-to-day life. But with FE, in my personal experience, even though I took it a little bit later, although I do know people who have taken like 10 years out of school, 12 years out of school, and had to take it a couple times only because of the fact that it's hard to get yourself excited about something like an FE exam because you cannot relate to it anymore.
Yeah, just the breadth of material that's covered in the FE
Yeah.
can be daunting. And, but as we've all said, keep pushing through to make that happen. Anna's been posting some resources. I know Andre posted a resource, but Anna's been posting a few things. Anna, do you have any?
I do have one great tip that I learned while I was taking my FE exam, which was you can take your FE as a general engineering exam as opposed to it being your discipline specific. So let's say I'm an electrical engineer, but my FE exam, for that I went for general engineering exam because you're still covering fundamentals of engineering like the exam states, but you don't have to put so much effort into like your first step, which is like your FE. So you don't have to feel like, oh, I haven't really gotten into the depth of my industry to start taking FE exam because it will be like 100% civil or 100% electrical. You can really take the general exam, and that can probably make it much quicker for you.
Okay.
I'm just gonna just jump in there because I was just about to say that. Tish must have read my mind. I also took the general I didn't take the civil because I wanted to just have a less of a breadth of fundamentals to study. And I know the folks that took civil, when I took the FE, they came out like, we didn't know anything about civil engineering. They felt sort of like we didn't learn much about it as undergraduates. So it is still an option. I think it's the FE other disciplines. I think it's other disciplines, and that I think you can take. I'm not sure if the NCEES, kind of judges that, but it does give you a narrower amount to study. So consider that if you can. I took my FE. I'm not going to tell you what year, but it was a long time ago.
Yeah, I
we're-
had years
Okay, so you were able to do
a
it. Okay.
discipline-specific PE after that.
Yeah, I did the discipline-specific PE, obviously, but not the FE.
Yeah.
I know I can see there's a lot of anxiety about the test in the chat, and tests are no fun for anyone, right? No one loves this. And I will just say I've met plenty of people that said, gee, I wish I had studied more, including myself, after you've taken an exam. I've never met somebody that said, I studied too much for the exam. And if you put it on the level of like the bar exam for lawyers, I think that is the level that you need to commit to study for it, and you will not regret that. I had plenty of regret when I didn't pass it the first or the second time, that I didn't study enough. The first time I kind of went in cold. I was like, I'm going to bank on not passing it and just want to kind of experience it. And that was okay in my mind for that, because I had so much anxiety about the test. And so that actually helped me with framing the cadence of the exam and kind of the depth of it. So that was my mindset going into it the first time. And then I studied quite a bit and still didn't pass it, and then passed it on the third time.
Great. Andre?
As far as like the FE, I would say definitely while you're in college, try to take steps to take the exam. A few of our panelists mentioned that, because when you're removed from college, you actually forget how to take tests. You forget how to take tests, and so you want to, while you're in test taking mode, going through your college matriculation, you want to try to get that exam knocked out. And just some more food for thought. A lot of the entry level jobs, the employers are asking for the FE within 6 months to a year of hire. So just to be able to compete with all the other applicants, you want to try to have that FE done. It's going to be a lot of your core competencies that you learned through your college matriculation. So you're going to want to try to get that done and just be dedicated to, I tell all my mentees, probably set aside a good 3 to 5 months of just hunkering down and studying, doing all the practice exams that you can do, because you want to get to a point where there's not a question that you see that you don't know how to attack. And the way these tests are written for both FE and PE, they're written by engineers. They're written by, professional engineers. So they get together in a room and they write these questions for these exams, and they are trying to weed out if you really know what you're doing. And a lot of times I tell my mentees, like, make sure that you thoroughly read the problem statement, because it could be a problem that's very similar that you've seen during your independent studying. They like to put in the questions distractors, I like to call them, where it's not things that you need to solve the problem, but if you don't know what you're doing, you'll go through a series of steps to solve for something that was not what the question was asking you for. And they'll have the wrong answer as one of the answer choices. And so you have to really know what you're doing, so that you have to really be diligent, do a lot of problems. I really took initiative to be like, I want to make sure that I cover all subjects. And I did the FE Civil because I didn't want to mess around with circuits. I didn't want to deal with thermodynamics. I was like, I'll just do FE Civil as something that I know, but you kind of have to know what your strengths are. And if you do take the exam and you don't pass it, get that diagnostic report and be real with yourself and see, like, okay, here's my strengths, Here's my weaknesses. And the next time that you study, start with those weaknesses first and make them your strengths.
Yeah, I think that just reinforces the whole concept that failure is not failure unless you quit.
Yep.
When you do reach a point where you didn't pass, then you get the feedback, you figure out where do you need to adjust? What do you need to do differently in order to get the result that you want? Many times we focus on the outcome that we want, not on the inputs that we're using in order to get the outcome. And so I think what Anna was mentioning before, the first couple of times was she didn't think she studied enough or she could have done something differently. And I think many of us know that there are things that we could have done differently. And we eventually did those things so that we could get the result that we wanted. All right. We had a couple of questions that came in. One, I think, Erin, would be for you. They were asking about getting your PE in multiple states, kind of the process for that.
Yeah, sure. Well, I was surprised when Anna said you got it in California and then you needed to do different things in Alaska. I did get it in Virginia to start, and I've been fortunate that I could take that Virginia PE with comedy, not comedy, COMITY, to other states, and really, and NCEES has made it even easier having that online record of everything, because you don't have to call where you got your FE from and call where you got your original PE from. It's just all in the record, and they send that record off to the state, and then within generally a couple of weeks, barring some wackiness, you usually have the PE in the other state. I've not had to do any extra years of experience or test taking or anything to be able to get the PE in other states. Pennsylvania did make me go through a background check, which is a little bit strange, but was one of the few that was a little bit extra stuff. But all the other steps, as long as you don't let that lapse, I would be careful about your original state. Don't let it lapse. If you move across the country, I did move across the country to Arizona and then Utah, and I thought, oh, I don't need my Virginia PE. And then when I came back to Virginia, I was like, it was actually just to that 5 years. If you let it lapse for 5 years or more, you will have to retake the exam. So I would advise to keep it current if you think there's any chance you would still want that PE in that state. Generally, employers will pay for your PEs in states, your PE license and your renewals. You do just watch your continuing education, because each state's going to have its own continuing education requirements. So that's probably years away for some of our folks here in the room, but just start thinking about how you might keep up that continuing education. Often your employer will provide opportunities for you to do that, but sometimes you do need to do things on your own. Each state kind of has its own nuances there. NCES can also keep a register of your continuing education for you. I use a separate spreadsheet and my own records, but if you get audited, you will have to prove that you've done the continuing education. Hopefully that answered the question, James.
No, it did. And Anna, you said you were audited. How did that go, Anna?
It was fine. I think because government, and I think others have mentioned this, in terms of when you start your career and working in government, there's a lot of training opportunities. It's a really great launch for new engineers as well as continuing your education in your career. So I have a plethora of training credits and certificates and transcripts and all that stuff just from being in this field and working for the government. So it was just a matter of a paperwork exercise to document and scan and do all of that. It was probably like 5 or 6 pages of scanning and sending it, and then there was a waiting period to make sure, and then I got an email saying it was all fine. So it was the first time I had gotten audited, and a few other people in the office had gotten audited at the same time. So it wasn't targeted, there wasn't any complaint or anything that was sent or something to it's just kind of, I think, a random assignment through the system.
So we do have a question that came in, and for the group, be thinking about your questions. I have maybe 2 more slides after we finish this, but if there is a question or a comment or something that you guys want to make, feel free to jump in. But I'm going to read the question that just came in regarding concepts versus comprehension. How would you recommend being able to not only know the concepts for the test, but also comprehending the test questions? How is that something you were able to practice on while studying for the exam, I guess, by yourself? For me, it's practice. It's practice exams, practice problems, practice, practice, practice. You just keep doing more practice problems when you don't understand or you're not getting the right answer. Start investigating why. What is it about the way that I'm approaching this problem that's not allowing me to see that? More practice problems, more practice problems. Andre, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, James, you said it perfectly. Make sure you have some mentors that you can bounce things off of that have taken the exam and can give you some really valuable advice.
Anyone else?
That network is huge. I understand there might be situations where you have to buckle down and study by yourself, but having others who've been through it or others who are going through it, usually you can find that within your peers, your company, or go to an organization like ASCE or YPT, Young Professionals in Transportation, something where you can find that network of people that might be going through the same thing as you, or might be a little bit ahead of you and might be able to give you some advice. I think just using that network is really critical, especially when you're going through both the FE and the PE process. I wouldn't have gotten through without that support.
Same here. Same here. Okay, I have a few more slides. Panelists, is there anything else that you guys want to share before I make the switch back to slides? I only have about two more slides, but is there anything else you'd like to share?
Get comfortable with the regulation page for the state that you're in. You will have to do some paperwork and just call the office and talk with them about your situation. They get these calls all the time. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone and talk through if you have any questions about the application process or your qualifications to sit for it.
All right, I want to thank you guys for your time providing your insights into the FE and the PE. I really do appreciate it. This session is going to be recorded. We're going to post this recording to the members in the program, but you'll also get a link. Yes, we are also going to make sure that we put together a reference for the links that you all included here, as well as some additional links, and we're going to make sure that we're going to send those in. And any other questions that we didn't get answered, we'll make sure that we answer. The other part of the presentation that I have is just really a summary of the process in terms of looking at the essential resources, whether you're talking about the NCES materials. There are also some third-party study materials that you can take to help you both for the FE and the PE, as well as materials and resources that are in professional organizations, whether you're looking at the American Society of Civil Engineers or the National Society of Professional Engineers. Yeah. Just in terms of the process, this kind of takes you through a sample timeline in terms of putting together and studying for both the FE exam. If you know that you want to take it, you can start preparing 6 to 12 months beforehand. Make sure that you're putting time in your schedule to actually start doing the practice exams or studying for the exam. Do the practice exams, do as many practice problems as you can. As you get closer to the exam, you might want to intensify how you're studying. And then again, more review, more practice. The same is very similar to when you're looking at the PE. You may start a little bit sooner, but you are focusing on practice, 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 and more practice. So if you don't take away anything else from what we're talking about, one is going to be setting aside time to make sure that you can invest to prepare for the exams. So in terms of just general next steps, I would ask the program participants to review your career vision. We talked about that again in the first session. We talking a little bit more about the P and the FE. You can create your personalized exam preparation timeline. So if you know that you're coming into your senior year and you want to take it, you can start doing the research as to when you can take it and build in that study time into your schedule. Again, join the study group or find a mentor. I think you've heard those suggestions here throughout our discussion. And then register for the exam. Go ahead and register and take it and practice, and more practice. In that session, we're going to talk about navigating the professional world. So we're going to go through some scenarios where we're talking about effective communication in a professional setting. What are some things that you can do to build and leverage your network? And how do you present yourself authentically in interviews and in interactions? So we're going to talk through that on August the 2nd. Come with your questions, come with the issues that you want to make sure that we're able to discuss. And then I'm going to finish up the presentation. You'll get a copy of the presentation. You'll get a list of resources that we've talked about and that were included in the chat. You'll get all of that early next week. So you'll have that resource and that guide for you. And that there were a few questions or things that came up in the chat. So I'm going to stop sharing so we can get back to that. And I'm also going to invite Mr. James Jackson. If you have any words of wisdom that you want to add as well, I'm going to add you to the spotlight. There you go, Mr. Jackson.
Yep. For starters, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for coordinating this, but all of the speakers here, you just don't know, you have provided a tremendous value. In our department, what we're committed to is growth. In the government sector, we know there's variances in what we can offer, but we can offer growth. And by investing in Dr. Bryant and his association with you all, you've just really helped out many students. We probably have about 30 or more that could not make it today. And this is the main thing they talk about. So I missed a little bit of the call myself, but a lot of what I've been asked is in order to create a study group, what is that? And we actually have some employees here that work straight out of college and they just never pursued their FE. And now they're at a pivotal spot where they're open for leadership. If you're willing to maybe share a tip with Dr. Bryant just to keep him on schedule, I don't want to take him off schedule, of even some of the folks that started their pursuit of their FE later, if you'd be willing to kind of share some potential suggestions or resources. Thanks for your time, and thanks for the opportunity, Dr. Bryant.
No, it's good. Appreciate it. And no, we're done with the content. So we're great. Just a reminder for the program participants that the next session is going to be on August the 2nd. And then there's one session that follows after that where we're going to talk about leveraging your strengths and, provide maybe some details on the assessment, the strengths assessment. And that's really it. So we can get into these questions. So does anyone have any suggestions? If it's been a while, you've graduated school a long time ago, you've been working, you've been in your grind. Now you're looking up for opportunities, but you need to start that path for your PE. So you have to take the FE exam now. And so James, in this case, they don't have their FE, or they have the FE and they need to take the PE. Which is it again?
In this case, there are several that don't have their FE and maybe even has 10 years work experience and have moved on to advanced projects. And they, so that's kind of what it looks like.
Yeah. Any suggestions?
So when I was working at Illinois DOT, I started working. I had graduated with my degree as a master's degree, and I didn't have my FE done. It took probably 2 years working for the department before I actually got serious about, okay, I need to get this thing done to be able to advance. So I can relate to not having it. I started to see just amongst my work colleagues, like those that had their credentials and those that didn't. And it's just, you start seeing the ceiling is low if you don't have those letters. For example, Illinois DOT to BA, so we start off as a civil engineer trainee, and all entry levels come in as a civil engineer trainee. They go through a 2-year rotational program. You hit all the different spots of civil engineering. You do traffic, you get some construction experience, you do roadway design, you do documentation, you get into soils, you spend some time over in the soils lab. So we were getting exposed to several different elements of civil engineering, but I just started to see that all of my colleagues that didn't have their credentials, they weren't eligible to be a CE4. You had to have your PE. Like, otherwise, you would just stop at CE3. So you could not go past a 3 if you didn't have those credentials. And I was like, well, I want to be able to continue to grow. So for me, it was just an easy decision. If I want to have vertical movement and not horizontal or lateral, I've got to get my credentials.
Thank you for sharing that.
Anybody else?
I would just say, I know Hitisha probably has more experience because she worked and waited to do both of them kind of simultaneously. But from observations, I would say that people who decide to make a change, regardless in their career later on after they've started, those people are obviously working on their own trajectory, right? They've made a decision, they've done some internal work, and they're committed in one fashion or another. And I think it's worth being supportive of them in that journey and valuing their experience, but helping them however that looks like. And sometimes that's giving them the space to do that, whether it's sharing books or manuals and stuff like that with them, but also helping to recognize that it takes everybody a little bit of humility to put your ego aside, that this is just something that everyone has to jump through as an adult rather than like back in school at time. And it's not a popularity contest, and just be humble and share that humility with your team, your group, whoever, regularly, so that everybody recognizes this is not an ego thing. This is just a dance we all have to go through.
Yeah, and one of the things that I would add, James, for these individuals, so if you are listening in, you have been working for a while, you didn't do your FE before, you're 10 years in. Number one, I want to let you know that it's okay. Number two, I want you to give yourself grace and apply self-compassion. Understand, don't beat yourself up, don't judge yourself, because if you do, that is going to hinder your ability to move forward and study. If you beat yourself up, you're not going to want to study. You're never going to get past that hump. So that's like number one. Let's get those things out of the way. Give yourself permission to go back and study. Find a study group or find a program and study. Because if this is what you want for your career, if this is the thing that you have set out and said that you want to do, and studying is part of that next step for you. Apply for the exam, study. If you don't pass the exam the first time, it's okay. Many of us have already said that we took it multiple times. Nobody's ever come back and asked us how many times that we've taken it. So give yourself grace, but keep moving forward.
I think Anna touched on a very good point related to just ego versus insecurity. When we are really good engineers, we have 10 years of experience and we are progressing, getting into advanced projects. We assume that if we fail PE or if we fail FE, then it's just going to make us look so bad. Or even to ourselves, we will start doubting ourselves. But I think we should just consider our career, engineering, and what we do at our job versus our studies, two parallel lives, which obviously are related to each other, empower each other, but at the same time, these are just two parallel lives. I can be a great engineer, but I can be starting from zero in my test taking methods in PE. And I think that can help with the mindset too, because I used to have that insecurity where I was like, oh, there are so many, a lot of the professionals that I was studying with, they had masters in electrical engineering, so their concepts were really good. So I had to kind of tell myself, I was like, okay, I don't have these concepts clear yet, even though I am an engineer, but I don't have this concept. And that's the truth. It's okay. So we build these concepts now, we start from scratch. Just telling myself that and having that type of humility that was touched upon earlier, to tell ourselves we can be a good engineer, but we can be just bad at taking a 12-hour test that tests every single concept on the go. And conversely, it's also true that people might have P's, but they might not be great engineers. So they also have to work on that aspect too, where they're like, okay, I was great at this, I understand the concept, but application is not my strongest suit. So I have to work on this from scratch, or I have to learn from others in this area. So I think it works both ways.
You can have people that are great engineers that may not be good communicators, and that's going to cause issues too. James, did that answer your question?
Yes, that was an answer. In short, for me, this was phenomenal. Here at MDOT, we're committed to diversity, right? Not so much just how someone looks or their gender, but the color of your genius. For those that are on the call that want to endeavor greater things in engineering, partnering in collaboration with professionals that are well on their way, have accomplished specific goals, that's the way to get there. So how you shade and color your genius is by taking advantage of every opportunity that's available to you. Speakers, their lived experiences to enhance your capability to move forward and enlarge your territory by increasing your skill set. So with that said, I just really want to thank everyone on this call, every student that took the time to take a look at it, and forward thinking everyone that will see this video and be encouraged to move forward with their goals and aspirations. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, panelists, again. Thank you, participants. Appreciate the opportunity from Michigan in the program. And you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.